Shall we say the pledge? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey. Excellent. Do we have an approval of the agenda for tonight's June 17th, 2025 meeting?
Make a motion, we approve the agenda.
We've got Mike Cole. Do we have a second? Oh, we're going to give it to Lonnie. Can we vote on the motion to approve the agenda?
Aye.
All ayes. How about an approval of our meeting minutes from May 6, 2025?
I did read those this evening before I got here, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 6th meeting.
Thank you, Mike.
I also read them, so I will happily second.
Brilliant.
That. It was great.
May we have a vote on the approval of the minutes, please?
Aye.
I did approve, but one comment was Mike Cole said something at the end and said we'd answer it at the next meeting. I don't know what that was, but
It was your question.
I know. Anyway,
I'm sure if it's important, it'll come back.
yeah, I don't remember what it was, so but thank you for the summary.
Michael, any staff updates to share?
We do have some updates tonight. So just for the public that may be listening, there's going to be I-26 closures every night for the rest of this week, June 16th through the 20th. It's basically for punch list items as they close out the Henderson County portion of the project. So those will be June 16th through the 20th, 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. It could be a different section of the road closed every night. If you're looking for detours, they'll be posted, and you can always go to drivenc.gov to look at that in real time. Moving on, our UDO consultant pushed through an update to the project website, imaginemillsriver.com. So again, for any members of the public, the town's doing a comprehensive update and reorganization of all of our development ordinances. All the code diagnosis documents are now uploaded on there. So you can check those out if you'd like. And of course, that's after the steering committee meeting we had a week or so ago. Staff's been tracking legislation in the General Assembly regarding that project's exemption from the downzoning provision. So again, specifically for the Mills River UDO, what happened is the Senate modified the language in that bill and sent it to the House for concurrence. That did not happen today. The House did not concur with the Senate's changes to the bill. So basically it did not pass, and it's going to be sent back to the Senate to be looked at for additional changes or reconsideration. That's House Bill 183, so staff will continue to track that. We have a public meeting coming up July 8th at Mills River Town Hall with our partners at the Metropolitan Planning Organization, French Broad River. This specifically is for the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. They're looking at road, bicycle, pedestrian, transit, and rail projects over the next 25 years. It's a federally required plan, and it has to be fiscally constrained. So again, looking at what potential projects could be funded 25 years out with the funding constraints applied to them. So again, that's July 8th, Mills River Town Hall, Commons Room in this room, and that's from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. I did want to report that at the council meeting last week, they made the appointments to the Land Preservation Committee, and Mr. Cole was appointed from this board to serve on that committee. So just wanted to note that that committee's first meeting will be July 1st, where there will be a review of the application, some preliminary documents before staff puts that up on the website. Almost getting to the end. Staff recently purchased a planning and zoning training library of modules that will be showing at some upcoming meetings. They're like 20 to 30 minute kind of short introductory videos to, let's say, subdivision regulations or landscaping ordinance. Maybe not that specific, but just wanted to let you know, we're always looking at opportunities for training for this board. And so we were able to secure that. I think we have that library for the next year. So we'll look for time. And obviously make sure the chair's okay with the agenda to maybe slip one of those in at one meeting at a time, 20 to 30 minutes each session. And then lastly, just wanted to provide a brief update on the floodplain ordinance. As you know, or the draft floodplain ordinance, staff's been working in concert with council to develop that. Last week, we went through some of the draft language in the ordinance, and we're at a place now where staff's cleaning up the final language and is going to send it to the town attorney for review. After that, it will go back to council most likely in August, and then the moratorium on floodplain development expires early October. So the goal is to ideally start the adoption process with council's permission, obviously, to meet that October 7th moratorium deadline. And those are all the updates I have.
Thank you. It's nice to get those updates about I-26 because you just happen to stumble upon it when it's closed and you're kind of between Long Shoals and the airport road and there's nothing you can do. Not saying that's happened to me recently, but it has. This may not be the moment for it, and we probably will cover it before it's over, but can we confirm we do not have a meeting in July scheduled?
That's correct. This board traditionally does not meet in July. Council usually does not as well, except they have one meeting where they're legally required to charge the tax collector with starting tax collections. But traditionally, advisory boards do not meet in July.
Okay, that is what I thought. Thank you. Unless we have any public comment from a source other than present?
I just wanted to highlight, this was already emailed out to the board, but we received a public comment letter for the Henderson County Partnership for Economic Development, specifically their Economic Investment Fund, or the EIF, in support of industrial and planning for industrial uses in Mills River. And this was specifically around the future land use map amendment up for consideration. But there's no other public comment we've received.
We still need board comments, Chair.
Yes, I actually realized that we should circle back to that as well. Do you have, or does anyone have a board comment or update?
My only comment is thank you for changing this meeting. I appreciate it. I hate to miss a meeting. It's a privilege to serve on this board, so thank you.
Glad to have you here. Anyone else? Cover now? Okay. So then I think that brings us to our old business, which is the amendment to the future land use map, text amendment 2502.
So it's been about a month and a half since we looked at this last time. Just as a reminder, excuse me, this came out of the comprehensive plan amendment, removing the description of industrial uses from the community center district. And we talked about updating the future land use map, but also accommodating potential industrial uses in that Six House Road corridor. So the direction I received at the last meeting was to basically update the future land use map to reflect current zoning of properties, specifically light industrial. There was consensus to remove portions of the community center district to the west of Old Turnpike Road, which was in the watershed critical area, up towards Broadmoor, Industrial Park, Ferncliff. Again, there's some new blue parcels there where the light industrial zoning is in place. And then specifically, there were a couple areas in the community center district in red where staff added some additional parcels, and I'll scroll through all this and zoom in a moment. And then the last update or category of updates was changing some of the community center district northeast of the intersection of Old Haywood Road and 280 back to a mixed residential district. Basically, the future land use map had assigned that community center district to established subdivisions, established residences, which we didn't think was appropriate because those residences are most likely going to stay there in perpetuity or be redeveloped for a residential nature. So really, this is before you, just for consideration, this is the first time staff's brought back a fully amended map for your consideration. We do have all the documentation tonight that if you're comfortable with this, you can move forward. So the statement of consistency is included. And then I forgot to highlight attachment D. There was an ask for overlaying this map with the floodplains. And so if you look at attachment D, it's a little bit hard to see, but the floodplains are those dark lines in the background. So basically anywhere you see those darker colors is where a floodplain overlaps with one of these future land use districts.
Thank you.
But I'm happy to take any immediate questions. If not, I'd like to dive through the map and kind of zoom in on some of the specific areas for change.
Yeah. let's-
Scroll to- see, I think. And if you could just zoom in for me before I drag. That's good, thank you. There we go. Okay, so let's start at Schoolhouse Road. So I did this the same way we've been doing it. So anything that's in a darker color is an addition or a change I've made. So here on the southern part of Schoolhouse Road, there's a 35-acre parcel here next to Bold Rock. The Bold Rock properties in the middle. And again, this was all the rural residential green color. Rural agricultural designation. And then the other new parcel added is this larger, I think it's like a 60-acre parcel that's currently has a single family home or two on it and is farmed for corn currently, agriculture. The other ones added are basically, again, all these light blues. So we've got the corner at Schoolhouse and Banner Farm, where there's the proposed warehousing and distribution development that's currently under review with staff. We have the produce packers. There's a vacant parcel here, and then I believe another agricultural packing house further up. Again, this is all, besides these two, all of this reflects light industrial zoning currently. We've got the Norafin, we've got Mills River Brewery extending up here. And then this part that kind of wraps around, that's the Brandy Branch Industrial Park. So again, those are all zoned light industrial, so we included those as well.
Lowe's, right?
Correct. Lowe's is right up here about where my cursor is. The parcel lines get a little blurred with the colors.
What are the kind of big puzzle piece that's kind of missing from that on the left side there?
Over here.
Yeah, like
So
those big parcels there?
Yeah, so this is the town's former property. So originally, before the town made the purchase next door, the town owned, and I'm gonna get the acreage wrong, 25 acres of land back here, that's on a hilltop. This is that property. The rest of it, there's another parcel out here the town used to own that is next to Mills River Brewery. This one I did not include because, without going into too much detail, I've received development inquiries on it and they're not for industrial use.
What's the actual zoning there?
I'm pulling it up while we're talking. If you want to just leave it alone, I've got GIS.
No, you're
coming up.
fine. I'm pulling it up too.
Okay.
But
I know
give me a
you,
moment.
we just have to remind ourselves, this is not zoning.
Correct. This
Nothing
is-
we
this
see up
is-
here is zoning. We
You're
just have to
correct.
constantly remind ourselves.
This is future land use map, so this is advisory, an advisory designation for future land uses to consider as part of a rezoning action.
Well, what I would add to that, if anybody was tuned into the UDO meeting last week, Monday, the very first thing that Chad brought up was this map. And then in conjunction with, it's hopefully the ability to use the UDO to zone the way we want to. This is kind of a cornerstone piece for them, for him to be able to include that in the UDO and the descriptions of things that we're looking for. So it is important.
Well, it is zoned light industrial,
Yeah.
so I agree with you. But also important to remember, even though the inquiries are not industrial, that's the zoning, correct?
Mhm.
Right. So the zoning there is light industrial.
That's correct. So, wrong mouse. Yeah, so this parcel is zoned light
Right there.
industrial, just based on what I'm seeing, and that it is one large hill. Professionally, I don't think that will be developed for that. But again, it's at the board's pleasure.
Look, I know this is a little off topic, it's not totally. There's been a lot of people I've spoken with that we talk about not wanting to fill flood. There's also a lot of people talking about wanting to stop taking hills and mountains down, and that's one of them that would be great light industrial if you took it down in grade.
Right.
Future topic, filling in the holes over here and knocking down the mountains over here. Mills Rivers is gonna be,
That was in the UDO as well.
knocking it down.
Like, well, just hilltop and mountain and like, slope management.
A ridge, yeah.
Yeah, ridge. So,
Yes, the slope management is a little bit different, but bringing things down on grade increases their value on frontage.
Mm.
Just period. Like, look at Publix, right? Look
Yeah.
at all this stuff. So, future topic, but that knocking these mountains down is almost as sinful as filling in the flood to me.
And we do have the ability to have mass grading ordinances, or mass grading, how do I phrase this? Incentives against mass
Oh, okay.
grading. There was actually some chatter about that on the planning list, state planning listserv today. So that's something we can always bring up through the UDO committee to have the consultant look at specifically.
Yeah, when the time's right, I'd love to have that earmarked to talk about more.
Yeah, so I guess my question though is like, if it is zoned industrial and right now red is community center, and I thought we had taken industrial out of.
Well, not zoning. We can't touch the zoning.
No, I know we can't rezone it. That's why I'm wondering why should it be blue? Is my question.
Well, the frontage is Presbyterian Church, right?
Part of it.
Yes, unless you take this one other little skinny parcel that's
Next to the
completely open.
brewery that could connect it to Banner Farm.
Mhm.
what's that, street where you, vision for Mills River was to connect like our park or.
Correct. So originally, when the town owned it, I believe the Parks Master Plan was adopted in 21, right before I started here. And that master plan included concepts for park development for that property specifically. And then I didn't finish this part, but when the town purchased next door, this was included as a land swap in place of cash.
But the same person does own both parcels now. I'm sure you know that.
Oh, yes.
And who it is, but
Oh.
not a Mills River resident. Thanks for letting me interrupt on the
Well,
mass
so
grading.
I think the question still remains from the chair.
Yes.
About that parcel, and I feel no differently either way. It is zoned light industrial right now. Again, this being an advisory document, if there was a zoning decision for it to move away from light industrial, leaving it in community center would support that. And
I would love to see that in the future, because if you guys can picture, they're small, but there's little houses all right there. And you got to transition. That hard line transition is not ideal. I like the gradual, but in the future, we could get away from light industrial and still be in compliance with community center. Is that what you just said?
Correct. So that one parcel is zoned light industrial now. So if a developer came, or if someone came and wanted to rezone it, keeping it in community center would support a rezoning away from light industrial.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense then.
So
And
I'm sorry.
oh, no, and again, my point, just using my discretion and leaving it out was because of the topography, because of the surrounding area, and then just because of context I've received in the office, I just felt to leave it out. But again, for the board's
So by keeping it, it's our, community vision
right.
would be to keep it preferably developed in a way that's different than it's currently zoned. right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Which is what we did up above, up north a little bit, but where we've changed some away from developments. We changed it from Right, anything that bore, and there were homes on Presbyterian Church Road, so.
Michael, you might not have an answer for this, but it's got me thinking. We have so many of these roads, and just forget specific properties for the sake of this question. We have so many roads that are near another road. If they just did a deed of recombination on two parcels, what zoning overrides when that happens?
It's a split zone parcel then.
So it does remain split based on the prior property lines?
Correct.
Okay. If everyone follow along with that, that concern there is if we changed zoning on Presbyterian, but zoning remained on Banner Farm, and he did a deed of recombination, which makes, in this case, two parcels a single parcel, as far as the county's concerned,
Mhm.
what happens? And the answer is a split zoning or dual zoning.
Yeah, which means that the applicant or property owner would have to rezone to one zoning district.
Right.
That was actually what the public shopping center developers did, because that parcel was split zone between, I think, neighborhood, commercial, mixed use, and maybe something else.
And that comes to the planning board first? Where does that?
Like any rezoning, it would come to the planning board for review and recommendation.
That did, for public.
That did?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was split.
Again, thanks for the detour.
Any other questions about the light blue in the schoolhouse area? Okay, so I'll move to what Mr. Cole just brought up. So these darker green sections up here along Old Turnpike Road, I heard consensus at the last meeting to remove this from community center and put it into the rural agricultural district. Again, watershed concerns with the Hendersonville intake being right here. This is all in the watershed critical area. Some of this is not over here, but a lot of these are kind of agricultural properties. And then I did hear that corner triangular piece, I think with the vet, should be left community center. So those were the changes I made there.
Michael, if we can we go back, as long as everyone nodded, it looked like on that one, and there were no questions on that one. The 60-acre parcel, you've shaded blue here. Of course, that's actually not light industrial now. It's neighborhood commercial. Can you give us an example of something significant that's different between the zoning of neighborhood commercial, which it currently is, and light industrial, which we're saying we would encourage in the future?
Yeah, neighborhood commercial is usually I'd say light retail. So retail within an enclosed building, services within an enclosed building, schools. It's going to be low impact commercial uses. Light industrial obviously is going to be higher impact light industrial uses, which could be anything from manufacturing to warehousing and distribution.
Currently, it's zoned that eastern shade blue, it's two parcels, 60 acres, two single families, is zoned neighborhood commercial.
Correct.
So it would take a rezoning to allow but we all agree schoolhouse is a good corridor for this. I'm just pointing out it's not currently zoned that way.
That's right.
So it would have to be at the applicant, not directed from the town.
That's right. So if there's no other questions, I'll highlight these two parcels right here. From what I heard in the past, when the future land use map was drawn, if any property touched any bit of floodplain, it was put into rural agricultural or the light green shade. This property does have quite a bit of floodplain in the back, and you can see that on, I don't have the attachment number, but the next page. But because of its frontage, I changed that to the community center district. I also changed a couple of parcels up here, which include the two existing manufactured home parks and then some of the commercial in this area. Some of it existed already, but some of the back parts were in the rural agricultural category. Recently, those manufactured home parks have actually both been purchased and are in the process of being revamped, I'll say, redeveloped in a way. So with the understanding those aren't going anywhere anytime soon, that was a suggestion I put.
And the next parcel's on the market for sale right now. The one directly, that one.
That is.
That's
correct.
been filled in with garbage fill for years now. I mean,
And the chips.
I don't understand what they're gonna build on there, what engineer's gonna sign off on it, but that's not our problem. That's for sale right now. Roughly, where does the flood plain at the 100-year?
It goes up there quite a ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is only 7, and I know this.
So he's actively filling crap fill into the flood is my point.
Well, there was there was fill placed there a number of years ago that was done improperly, and there was an enforcement action take from the state.
Oh, okay.
The mulch that you see there now was done with a permit, and it's a temporary storage of basically storm debris mulch. But you're right, the majority, 2/3, 3/4 of the property, the back
Pretty
part
far up there.
is in the floodplain. There's about 7 to 8 acres at the front that is out of the floodplain and developable. But again, just with the idea, and again, you can actually see that on these other parcels too, that, I think some of them were red.
That's good and
The manufactured home parks, and I think some of the surrounding commercial uses. Those are also in the floodplain as well. Now, we also have to consider that if there's a floodplain ordinance coming forward with limitations, that's why I made some of these changes. Those part of the properties, if that ordinance is adopted, would not be developable.
well, what's the widening? Is that going north? Is the widening right there, 191 coming onto, it's coming onto that property?
The Haywood Road widening?
Yeah,
Yes, they have taken some of the frontage of that property for right of way.
but we're not seeing that reflected here.
No, this is just
So
general.
it's even less out of the flood.
Correct. This is just general with the.
It's road and flood
Well,
and the
his
strip.
initial fill years ago down there, what you're talking about illegal, you got in trouble about, I think. So,
Well, they did it out here on Hoopers too. It's one of my points. I want to keep going, we're taking mountains and we're lowering them and we're taking the flood and we're filling. So
Yep,
it's
flat.
just-
And really, my only intent with putting community center on this is the Haywood Road frontage. So if someone, and let me just pull up the current zoning.
I believe it's general business.
Yeah, it is general business now, so technically a rezoning wouldn't be needed. But in the spirit of trying to make this reflect what we would like in those areas, I made that change. Because again, it's one of our main commercial corridors.
I totally agree with that
Okay.
change for the record. I just want to make sure everyone knows exactly what we're talking about. We're driving by and what this looks and what it could. I totally agree with this change being part of it, maybe, or the community center.
Is that the other dark red just north of that? Is that the townhome
That's
property?
correct. And really, the
Yeah.
only reason for that was because the townhome was
Yeah.
there.
If you look at the flood,
Well, it touched the flood back when they did the zoning.
yeah,
What's the right?
They took it out of it.
that's just new commercial, I mean, new.
Yeah, the brighter, darker red is the change I've made.
But that doesn't, I don't believe, is GIS reflective of the elevation change there right now?
No, and
I
again,
don't
this
believe
is
it is.
this is more rudimentary because we're really looking at districts. Now, based on the development plans I reviewed, the townhomes did not fill the regulatory floodplain. They
Oh,
filled the 500-year
That's right. I'm
floodplain.
sorry.
And if you look at how they developed, it basically comes down in an L shape. There's like 30 acres, the whole backside of this property here is actually reserved in perpetuity for open space.
Okay. So the 100 does not encroach that dark red at all.
No, it does.
Yep, yeah.
It does encroach in the dark red, but the point is the development's complete and the deed restriction basically keeping that land as passive open space
Got it.
is there. So that the portions of that property in the 100-year floodplain would never be developed just based on the special use permit issue.
I also agree with that change. If you're asking, if you're polling us as we're going
I
through
am,
these changes, I'm yes and yes and yes.
And then keeping the UDO in mind, which the conversation was, a lot of the conversation the other day was having different parts of the town have different sorts of,
Identities with
Identities. which allows perhaps, us to maintain the rural character in a larger part of the town. And so adding those things and moving it from green to red makes sense. So.
Okay. And there are a few other parcels up here that are not the townhomes property that again, were I think near a creek or something. And I just changed those to community center.
So far you have the dark green, the over here, the schoolhouse blue, these two reds.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
I'm just curious if everyone's following along, if there's anybody that has objections to these first four.
I don't, and then there's more industrial up
I
north.
see he has more. I just don't want us to lose track of it, the
I
no's or
got you.
yeses along the way.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in 1 or 2 more, Kevin? That's perfect, thank you. So this next suggestion was again, removing sections of the community center that are in existing residential areas.
Right.
This is Foxhall Road, that subdivision, again, those houses aren't going anywhere. this up here as well. Maybe one day, there could be a different type of residential development or residential redevelopment in that area. But with it being away from the commercial core, that community center designation, is less of a good fit in my opinion.
Where are we at? Butler Bridge?
Sorry,
Yeah,
yeah, this is
Butler.
Butler Bridge.
Okay,
And
so
this
is
is
that
Old Haven.
MR 30 or what is that right now?
Currently,
Or is it
it's your favorite mixed use.
mixed use? Yeah.
Just-
If you bet on that each time, you have a big chance of being right.
Good chance,
That
right.
it's mixed use, yeah.
I was going against the odds, I think.
I'll touch on it just since it's right here. There was one property we added to community center in the same area. And that is across from Cardinal. That is the Gerber Collision Center, formerly the Land Rover dealership. Again,
Yep.
unlikely that's gonna revert away from a commercial. So scrolling eastward, so here we have Fanning Fields, and we have the other side of Butler Bridge here. So in the past 3 to 5 years, there's been a couple rezonings next to the Glen Marlowe property. And this basically incorporates those into the community center district. One was the former Anointed Word Church property that was rezoned to neighborhood commercial. I believe, before I got here, the child care center that's now, I believe, a religious school was also rezoned to neighborhood commercial. And then across the road, there was the Air Check business, which was rezoned to neighborhood
The
commercial.
Radon Company?
Correct. So on this side, this does include the church, but again, churches are okay in community center. So basically, I've taken those parcels that have been rezoned, put them in community center, and then I took the Air Check and this other adjacent larger property and put that into community center as well. That also includes the fire department property, which again, hopefully will be rebuilt with a new fire station.
I'm a yes on these last two.
Okay.
Much cleaner, Michael, thank you.
Yeah.
No worries.
Groupings.
So the last, sorry, zoom out one, Kevin. The last one are gonna be the industrial changes. Well, we'll go through Broad Point and then Ferncliff. This is a parcel along at the end of the Fanning Fields Road extension. This property right here with my cursor on it is actually being developed for the James River equipment site right now. That's gonna be a major dealer and servicer of John Deere equipment, the larger scale construction commercial equipment.
Before you move away from that, are they going to, reconnect Fanning Fields to, Broadmoor again?
No,
Okay.
that's not, yeah, Fanning, even though it's on the map, Fanning Fields does dead end.
Okay.
So that parcel was added back in. So let me switch to my zoning. That is currently zoned light industrial. So that's one of the ones where we're just bringing it, so they match. This larger one here, this is currently Mountain Horticultural Research Center land, but it's currently zoned light industrial. I don't think the state will ever get rid of that land. But again, just in the guise of matching the zoning with the future land use map, that was changed. It is a larger parcel. The other one in this area is around a warehouse that was built about 2 years ago at the corner of Old Fanning Bridge and Broad Point. That is where the pod storage has moved into that warehouse.
Just,
So
just
again,
following along with you on GIS, that directly to the south, a couple parcels, that large blue that you added there is currently NC State. Or several parcels are, but that's mixed use in there. Zoning,
yes,
but
down
it is
here.
this odd horseshoe around it with light industrial, and you just kind of put it all, and I agree with it, but you've put all of that right to the south of that. There.
Yes, now this was all existing. I don't know if you can do the color difference, but this was all existing.
On the future land use map, I'm just
Correct.
pointing out to anyone not being a geek here, following GIS, that the zoning is this giant horseshoe of light industrial around NC State, which is all mixed use. But
Correct.
we're lumping it as light industrial for future land.
Correct. There are a couple parcels here. I will just say this is zoned light industrial and I did not make that change because it is like 90% in the floodplain. So I didn't feel that was appropriate. And then really moving up, we have formerly the Riveter, now called Fiddlehead. They are here. They are zoned light industrial. That was formerly rural agricultural. And then we have this is actually an error, we'll correct. This is within town limits. This is the other portion of the Sierra Nevada property, also zoned light industrial. And those were all the correction or amendments we made.
That part, south of there, is that Fletcher creeping in
This,
right there?
I believe that is,
It doesn't matter. It's not in our town limits, but that one parcel is.
I believe that's county.
Okay.
But there is some Fletcher land.
Oh, yeah.
There is some Fletcher land back here, sorry, town of Fletcher. And obviously, I can't remember the old facility name, Quality Point is what it's called now. That is also town of Fletcher, the industrial, building. Continental Teeves, that's what it was.
Where Quality Point was?
Quality Point is.
Yeah, that is town of Fletcher, that is not Mills
Yeah,
River.
that's where they're at now.
Now,
Am I on the-
I know this is.
I think that's Quality Point, isn't that?
Yeah, cause Quality Point's right there and then you go back into the rest
Okay.
of the industrial.
That's
so-
not ours.
Has that ever been broached with Fletcher to annex into Mills River? Or trade or something?
I don't know. Yeah, I believe, I'd have to look, but I believe, when Fletcher started annexing across the French Broad was when Mills River, when folks within the Mills River community decided to start looking into incorporation.
Yes.
It's probably a nice tax base for them.
Well, really, it's only one plan.
Yeah,
So
Their tax rate's a lot higher than ours.
that's correct, but they haven't been able to keep it filled. That's the problem. So, like on the other side of the strip or the street, not the strip, Lord. We've been able, like, as soon as FedEx went out, Manna Food Bank went in, we've been able to keep, our industry, whether that be in the same building or move to a different plot. We keep our manufacturing quite well here. Fletcher does have a larger.
Call them
Right.
up, make it happen.
It'd be awesome though.
You zoom back out.
I like to color in the lines.
You just don't like them being on our side of the river.
it won't be symmetrical.
That is correct.
West side, west side.
So that's the summary of the amendments I made. Is there discussion, questions, changes the board would like to consider for this?
Heard from Brian. Anyone else?
I'm good with them.
I
Good
agree.
job.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I know this was probably a lot of work to redo the maps and then make the overlay with the floodplain, which I actually think is super informative and really interesting to see. But yeah, this I think conforms with what the planning board was looking for, and it does make it, it makes a lot of sense.
Michael, we would need to send this to the council, but you said the statement of consistency in here is for this as it is right now, right?
That's correct. So if the planning board is comfortable with this, staff has included a statement of consistency and does recommend approval of this. That statement is included as attachment E. So again,
That's text 2502, right?
that's correct.
502.
TXT 2502. So if it's the board's pleasure, you could make a recommendation to recommend approval. And again, if you want to do it in the same motion, you could recommend approval of TXT 2502 and adopt the statement of consistency as presented.
Open the floor to motion to that effect.
I would make that motion.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone second?
I mean,
Okay.
And the motion is to both adopt the changes and the
Make-
statement of
Yes,
consistency.
yes.
Okay.
correct. Okay, so are we ready to vote on whether to adopt the map changes as well as,
Text 25.
Statement of consistency.
yes, the statement of consistency of text 2502?
Yes.
I am ready to vote.
Okay, all for aye?
Aye.
That was unanimous.
Thanks again, Michael. And
Yeah, thank
everyone
you.
else who chipped in on that. I know
That's
that
pretty
wasn't
impressive.
So
simple.
that will go to council. Again, this is just review and recommendation, so we'll have to go to council to set a public hearing, and then they'll go through it and consider it at that time.
Perfect. Great. Okay. Super. Well, with that, we can turn to some new business. Looks like our first item for discussion is the subdivision ordinance amendment 503.
So this one's very simple. At the last meeting on May 6th, we discussed with the board's new attorney, Mr. McKellar, the option to basically amend or clarify the definition of common area and recreation area in the subdivision ordinance. And again, the request was to change it from land or combination of land and water resources within or related to a development to that same statement within and related to a development. And so you can see the excerpt of the ordinance with that one change, striking out or and replacing it with and is attachment A. And then we have the statement of consistency is attachment B. Same thing as before, staff recommends approval, finds it consistent with the comp plan. And if happy to take question, but if it's the board's pleasure, you can make a similar motion for this one.
I read through all that. I make the motion that we adopt that change and the what is it, text 2503 and the statement of consistency.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other comment before we move ahead on that motion? and
That was a
vote?
great catch, by the way. Very good
Cool.
work. So,
Okay. All in favor of making that change and adopting the statement of consistency vis-a-vis 2503?
Aye.
That was unanimous as well. Amazing. Productive meeting, guys. All right, let's move on to a discussion of the subdivision ordinance part 1.
So again, at the last meeting, there was consensus to start reviewing the entire subdivision ordinance. So basically what staff's done is we broke this into, as said, a part 1, which basically goes through everything through minor subdivisions. I believe I left the major subdivision construction requirements and process for part 2, since that's so lengthy and heavy. But this was in your packets. I'm happy to go through it with you. But really looking for direction from the board about how to proceed with this.
I may have a thought on this, and that is because I think it's a great idea.
Mhm.
But you know, with the UDO project and that sort of thing, I'm wondering if we go through this and this gets changed, you know, would we have to go through that process again, or should we wait? You know, on the UDO project to go in depth on the entire subdivision ordinances. So.
Well, Michael's opening letter, one of the comments was that we would share with the UDO from this direction.
Right, and I have a thought on that. So I'll share it now. So, is that, you know, again, Chad referenced this right at the beginning of the meeting the other night, and obviously the details, as you keep bringing up, are the zones for each of these things, and they're not compatible. That's how we came up with the rural residential, right? So I do think that we need to add some substance and be proactive, because I asked that in the UDO meeting the other night. How do we provide input to the UDO? And are you, is everybody on the board aware of what which didn't pass today, but the, not the carve out, but the
Exemption.
exemption?
Yes.
Is everybody aware of the exemption possibility?
Possibility.
Yeah, okay.
That's-
So, so the point was, do we go through this and use each of these meetings to then add substance and feedback back to Chad? Is that what you're saying?
I believe that was one of the points you made in the letter that your cover letter here, whatever you call your staff portion of this. I could find it in here if you wanted me to.
Yeah, the staff report basically says, so the consultant will draft ordinance text for the UDO steering committee to review, which almost the entirety of this board sits on that committee. But that doesn't mean we can't go through our current ordinances. Now, again, this will not be adopted in this form. It will based on the UDO being split up into these different sections, like one of them is just going to be applications and procedures. So subdivisions will not sit by itself anymore. The subdivision application and procedures may be under that section, so it might be split apart. But that doesn't mean we can't look at our requirements now, and if there's something that piques interest or piques a thought that we would want to include, we can always give the consultants that direction.
I agree. Then I agree with that. Then using
There you
this
go.
for
Yeah,
that
sorry. Right on the
process.
front page, actually. I
Yeah.
tried to look for it. I was like, oh man, I'm not gonna
Yeah,
find this in
then
time.
I agree with the going through it for that particular purpose, because not only can we do that and provide that feedback, but we may catch something that you caught before, which had nothing to do with downzoning and doesn't impact downzoning, but has a significant positive impact for the community. So
To that section of the
that's as
UDO.
much sunshine as I can give you, but it
thank
was
you.
really good. But no, I agree. So yeah, if we do that and provide feedback, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to have it all because Chad said, yeah, I asked what the role was. We could be proactive, but we're going to get we're going to get the UDO, review it as we just talked about and make a recommendation. It's up to the town council, obviously. But if I would rather give input all along rather than look at it, change back and forth, and that continues to extend the adoption of it. So yeah, if we're using it to go through there, find some inconsistencies, provide some feedback to Chad, I'm good with all of it. Yeah.
And just to clarify a point Mr. Cole made, and I think I did some back and forth with Chad on this at the steering committee meeting. The bill up for consideration, I believe Chad considered and he used the word blanket exemption. It is a blanket exemption for the UDO project.
Right.
It's not a blanket exemption for the town. So that means that if this exemption bill goes through, we have until July 1, 26 to adopt a UDO. My analysis so far is that because when we bid out or did an RFQ for the UDO, a zoning map was included as part of that. So I hope and I believe that a zoning map, a new zoning map for the town can be part of the UDO. But that's not a blanket exemption to say that in 2027, if the town wants to downzone someone's property, that we will be legally able to do so. That may not be the case.
If it's so if it's included in the UDO, all right, so let me ask you a question. So if through the UDO, do we have the ability, if according to Chad, with the UDO to implement the things that we wanted to implement in the rural residential zone? We can't do that as a separate issue now, but we can, like lot sizes and that sort of thing. Can we do that through this exemption and again, going through the UDO? Are we going to be
Yeah.
able to, okay.
That zoning map is the one shot.
Everything, yeah, and that's really it. Everything would, and we don't know how these other bills are going to play out because there's still blanket exemption bills out there for
Right.
every local government being considered by the General Assembly, although they've not moved. But our local exemption bill would just exempt this project through July 1, 26.
But it's our shot. So,
Correct.
And the zoning map that can accompany it.
Right.
That's my interpretation, because when we bid the project out, that was in the description.
Was it 6 months prior? It was, wasn't it? Even if they wanted to, oh, nice. I got it. So that bid is the exemption.
Well, the description, I mean, if you look at the statutory language in the bill that's been put out, it says the UDO project, I think, as initiated by council, and I can't remember the date, October 24. Well, the project, the contract council signed says a UDO with a zoning map.
Yeah, there you go.
To me, that is one project. And my hope is, and this will be checked by attorneys later on, but my hope is we can do it all in one big push. But again, if there's no blanket exemption of downzoning in general, after that, the town still may not be able to downzone after the UDO project.
But whatever zoning is listed within the UDO project would be okay.
Correct.
So we gotta get this right.
Including subdivisions.
I got you. I was just wanting to make sure there was a purpose to this. Wasn't questioned yet, but.
So I mean, really, I'm looking for direction from the board on how to proceed on this. I can go through and highlight some specific sections. We can always give the board time to read through this and revisit it later.
Well, I think we need to make a commitment to review whatever section we're going over before the meeting, which I did, and I don't know if everybody else had a chance to, but, and then you could highlight my recommendation would be to highlight those areas you want to highlight, but then we would bring questions based on our review of it prior to the meeting, so. So the first step would be, did everybody get a chance to review this prior to this meeting? So.
You know, I did.
I did, yeah, I did too.
I mean, we got this last week, which I really appreciate, even though I was on vacation enjoying my bouillabaisse. 9 in the morning. I mean, this is just definition of terms.
It
primarily.
really is. I would just move forward, as you said, Malcolm, just highlight what you want to highlight, and if folks who reviewed it have questions, at that point, we can bring up questions. Well, that'd be my
You can get
recommendation.
lost in this kind of stuff
Yeah.
pretty easy if this isn't something you live in. Yep. I can get lost in.
So is there board consensus for that to digest this? And again, knowing we're not going to meet in July, revisit this in August.
Yeah, unless there's anything.
That would
we
be
wanna
my
do
thought,
with-
yes.
This is essentially everything except or up to major.
That's right.
Yeah,
So you're saying, give us a chance to review it before the meeting in August and then dive into it then?
It's at the board's pleasure. I'm just trying to hash this out. We can either go through it now. I'm happy to go through it section by section. I'm just looking for direction.
So my question is, do we have time for that, or do we need to get on this right now?
We have, to review the text?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe we have time. I mean, the UDO consultant won't come back until August or September for the annotated outline. And so we're not gonna see an actual draft of ordinance text, and I'm pulling this out of my head, but November or December.
Well, go ahead.
oh, yeah. I mean, again, if you have something substantive that you want to flag from, attachment A, the beginning part, and minor subdivisions. Otherwise, I was gonna say perhaps we should plan to have reviewed and any comments on minor subdivisions and the major subdivisions. Plan to tackle that in August.
I agree with that. I mean, we just have to know that this is the major task in front of us, to be well prepared for each of these meetings going forward, so that we can go through all of this and do our job. Yeah, I would make the motion to push the review of this to the August meeting.
If I understood Lisa correctly, you study it, familiarize, whatever word we want to use here between now and then with this, and then have Michael prepared to add the major part at the discussion in August.
Yeah, or I mean,
Because we're only in minor right now, right?
we're in minor right now, but yeah, I was gonna say, perhaps we could talk about minor and major at the next meeting, if maybe the next, I mean, were you suggesting like giving us like an annotation, or would it be just sort of flat, somehow flagging particular provisions that you want to draw our attention to, or what, without trying to ask you to, what did you have in mind when you suggested that?
So, I mean, I think what's going to be helpful is to bring the UDO consultant, specific subdivision feedback. So I would focus less on the exact text here and like redlining it like we do for a traditional amendment. I would read through it see what items are of concern, or what do we think is not appropriate in terms of subdivision development anymore, or where do we think the process might be flawed, and just bring general thematic, just hit those general areas for feedback and bring those to Chad. Because again, we're paying them to draft it.
Right.
So we don't need to do that work. But yeah, I think it's focused more on the areas for feedback, discussion, and improvement.
So then to me, that process that we went through to create the rural residential zone, where we basically went through mixed use and what's allowable, what's not allowable, and we struck some things out and we added some things. Is that what you're saying? Use that process to basically walk through family subdivisions, minor subdivisions, and major subdivisions at the next meeting? Be familiar with those and then walk through that? That
We
would
don't
be-
have to know the legal language. We just
Right,
need to
that's my
understand what we
point.
think the
That's-
public wants to
I
see.
think that's what
convey
Michael's,
that,
yeah, I think
and
that's
make
what
it
Michael's point
legal.
is. We didn't know anything on the mixed use other than this didn't make sense. It's in that app. So I think we can do the same thing in family, minor, and well, family's pretty pretty straightforward, but minor and major subdivisions. Yeah.
I also feel like, and maybe this is part of what you're getting at in terms of not getting too bogged down and like rewriting what's here, but I feel like the gaps or the things that we want to highlight are the gaps, are the things that are not addressed in our subdivision ordinances that we would like to be addressed. So perhaps, and I think that's the problem sometimes when you get kind of bogged down in like looking at what does this say, and kind of going to what Michael was suggesting, which is like, what do we want it to say, and what do we want it? And I think, Denny's raised this before, can it include more landscaping ordinances, or, open space ordinances, or, can there be more rules? Those are the kind of, maybe, I'm not saying that those are the things, but maybe that's kind of what we're looking back for in terms of feedback. So it's not like necessarily a line by line review of us trying to parse through this language, but to kind of know what we have in place and be prepared to sort of address what we like about it, what we'd like to change, or we think that the town and community would like to change about it. And particularly, I think, at least in my view, what I've seen is to address those gaps, those areas that we don't specifically address yet.
I'll just give you an example. You guys may or may not know this, but we don't inspect our construction locally. You have the health department involved from the county. You have John Albee doing most of your residential inspections. You have the master plan submitted. I mean, you have all these things, but we don't have people going out to go through the crossing, engineer cross-checking, all the work. I don't know if you guys realize that. There's so many people's hands in it. Administratively, we do a ton in-house here, but on-site, unless something's drastically changed, I'm unaware.
We do one final zoning inspection for any and every permit, basically to make sure it was constructed per the approved plan, and that there's addressed numerals on the building. So if there's an emergency responders can find
It
it.
doesn't check drainage, a lot of the complaints you've heard about. It doesn't check construction, general construction, basic. It doesn't check anything on any of the, well, unless you get near the airport, then that's okay. But local. So it's just understanding that process, maybe a worthwhile at the others or every other. What does the county overlap some with that?
So the county is going to be doing the building permit review, the trade permits, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, et cetera. And then really the big one is going to be environmental health. So well, septic, drinking water, wastewater.
State. It's county health department. All of that is from Spartanburg Highway, King Strip. Everything he just said is from you have to get your permits here. Okay, but the county inspectors, they used to have trade specific inspectors. You had a plumbing inspector, that's all he did. You had an electric, you had all of that. Now it's just construction, which is all of those things, and environmental health. And that's 99%, I think we agree, of everything that's going on outside of your watershed there. So, Michael, I'm not the guy to do this, but I mean, maybe 10 minutes of just explaining that process, you guys maybe would be worthwhile, to see, you kind of see how that looks from breaking ground to CO, the certificate of occupancy.
Well, I also wonder if, again, so that I think is super informative, but whether or not we can make an ordinance around it, I don't know, which
Yeah.
is what I was going to suggest is if your training, videos
I was
that,
just thinking
that you have, perhaps that's one of the things that we could bring in advance. Maybe we could start our,
There you go.
start the meeting with a 20-minute video that sort of is educational on this, because I do think, well, we would all agree, we don't want to be spinning our wheels on things that, we can't move.
The subdividing is subdividing any parcel. It's not necessarily a large parcel. It can be taking 5 acres and making it 2.5. You've subdivided it. Do we want our hand in that? I mean, all the way through, major subdivisions. And now you have state DOT requirements that we don't even see very often that comes into play, There's so many things. I don't know what the training videos are you're referring to, but
Well,
ready to watch 'em.
they're, Michael mentioned them.
I'm ready to watch them. Let's watch 'em.
Yeah.
all of it. Because, rules change going forward, Henderson County might not decide to do something different.
Or if town council listened to the twice where I asked them for additional enforcement for our staff because of the increase in detail that the planning board is willing to suggest. Go into the UDO, because right now we only have 2 enforcers that have other duties in our staff. So, like we're planning for the future. We're not thinking about now. We know that we are limited in our people right now in our scope for what the county does, what we do as a town. That doesn't mean it doesn't change or that it doesn't move forward. So, making standards for what we want to see in the future is beneficial now so that we don't have to get into a Mill River crossing incident again, and try to backfill or fix something in the past. You've already got the regulations going forward. If they're never used, they're never used. If they are, awesome.
So here's my concern, and if I can clarify this, my fault. When's our rough deadline or expected finish of the UDO, Michael?
July of 26.
Okay, so we have 12.5 months, and if we do have one shot at this, I don't think we have the luxury of putting stuff in place just in case. I'd like to discuss more about what we are allowed and what we're just not allowed to do right now, in case this ends up being our only shot.
Well, I'll
If this
disagree.
is our only
But I
shot,
disagree because it is our only shot. That what I would rather do, this is just my thought, is I think we need to go through the subdivisions. I agree with that. But I would rather, just like we did in the rural residential, I would rather fill out what we'd like to see the zoning ordinances, not every last detail of it, but a big picture description of what the zoning should be for each of these on this map. Because we do have a shot. And until that shot is a blank, it's worth the effort to make sure that each of these colors has a zone that matches what is written in these descriptions here. That's how we created the rural residential zone. That's how I think we should spend our time.
To me, this is a definition of what that color map correlates to.
Right.
So this is the regulations that go with what we've.
You're talking about the subdivision?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like in the rural residential.
No, I think it's important to go through the subdivision, but I also think it's important this is our shot through the UDO specifically with zoning, because that's part of it, to say that it's now called rural agricultural. This is what the zoning ordinance should be for that, and what it should be for commercial crossroads and community center, industrial and employment and so forth. Because it's our shot to do that through the UDO. Because if that doesn't happen, we can still go back and address other things after that. We can address this after that deadline. That's why I would spend the
Yeah,
time on that.
and
That's my thought.
very
I
much
can't
more
real-
broader.
If I can real quick, the consultant is preparing a draft zoning map and that will be part of the next task.
Okay.
So task 3 is the annotated outline, again, the bones of the new UDO. But my understanding is the draft zoning map based upon, our initial stakeholder interviews, the first public forum, and then looking at all of our plans. They're gonna take a crack at that and give us something to react to. So,
Okay, sooner rather than later, that's good. I didn't want it to be
yeah, so
at the very end. Okay.
August or September, ideally, we'll have a draft
Okay.
zoning map to look at.
Yeah, and that would be something better to work off of then. So I agree with that. Okay.
Now,
That's
my point is
good.
I don't want to get bogged down in as much as frustration I have with Mills River Crossing. That was more just about a bad player, a bad actor than it was the rules. I mean, these rules exist. And I don't want to spend time attacking that right now. I want to do the broader stuff that are one shot thing.
It's the use of making a zone if you don't have.
Yeah, that's why I want to go through this too, but if that's what I'm asking the timelines over here.
How many plots do you have?
3 maybe, but that's off the top of my head. I figured major subdivision is so large, we'd probably break it into 2 chunks.
So for the next meeting, we could focus on minor subdivisions, family subdivisions, and then major subdivisions at the following meeting.
And this
we
is
wanna
all
ta-
residential only.
Well, major subdivisions does include commercial
Right.
subdivisions, but again, that's something we can look at.
I would separate that into a third
Personally,
meeting.
I don't really understand that part of the process because there's no standards to apply to a commercial subdivision.
We definitely need to look at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, I would separate, if we had the next 3 meetings, it would be minor and family, then major, and then the commercial part of major.
I'm down with
But
it.
you're thinking something else. I can see that. What are you
No,
thinking?
I don't want to use up too many meetings before we run out of time on this. I mean, July of next year.
But once we get
I'd
through
love to
this,
hit every single detail. You guys know that. I would
Well,
love to.
I'm gonna propose this now, that if we ever get anxiety of the fact that we may be running short on meetings, then we start adding meetings. This needs to get done, period.
I
We
agree with
don't
that.
have a choice about this. We're here to work.
It's done. Because if this is our one shot, I want it to pay off for every single person in Mills River, at least somewhere, somehow. So if that means that I have to come extra to meet with y'all, that's exactly what that's gonna mean.
That's a great idea because in the past, we have went through a period of time where we did have two meetings a month.
I don't
for
think
a long
anybody here
time,
will
as
have a
matter
problem
of
with that. I
fact.
think we've
I don't
actually
have a
stated
problem with
before,
that.
that that's not going to be an issue.
I mean, we don't, but
Michael,
you've got to be cognizant of your
we can
time.
do daytime meetings if we get 5 of us here,
Yeah.
or 4, whatever the rule is.
But there's a purpose for going through the subdivision.
Yes.
Okay.
So let me ask you,
Yes.
what direction you attack it from to identify that timeline more as you go? Do you attack it from the map of the zoning map, which we rarely are looking at, the zoning map versus the future land use map? Do you start there and talk about what does this look like? This zoning, whatever it is, what does it look like under, because it's not the same words in every case. Neighborhood commercial or community centers, there's all sorts of different words in it. Do we make a map for ourselves to start with?
If
And
the
then
map,
talk about what's allowed
if
in
the
each
map
one?
is going to be forthcoming and the description within that map from the UDO consultant in short order, I wouldn't do any of that work until we got that.
I would agree, but I'm not sure what short order is.
Well,
Was
that's-
that defined there
Well, he was saying maybe August, September, right?
for the,
It's a preliminary,
Coming
obviously.
in task 3, the next task.
the next task?
So during the UDO, meeting, one of my notes was, we need to focus on the plan. Will, revise for the zoning of that.
And input, lots of input.
That the consultants look at the future land use map to inform the UDO and to also inform the zoning map. So if this future land use map amendment goes through and if it is approved by council, I will shuffle this over to the consultants and make sure whatever they are proposing is, yeah, that this is reflective of that.
I mean, whatever they put together has to be reflective of this, right?
Sorry.
Where are we working on that part?
Whatever, the
Where's
whatever,
this board working on that part?
So our recommendation for the future land use map amendment, that's what we're already working on. That's what we are sending to council to get, approved
Right.
at their leisure.
Right.
So that's going to affect what the UDO reflects in the zoning aspect of it.
Right.
Right? So we're already working on that. We're multitasking. So this is our big stuff, you know, with our land use map. And then this is the detailed work, the definitions that we need to make sure that, Chad knows this is what we wanted it included in our ordinances.
Mhm.
He's gonna clean whatever it already says up, like this whole thing. He's cleaning that part up. But, you know, there is some stuff like what a major road is, and it says 4,000 vehicles per day. Like, so I would like to know what that is. Like, there's a couple of things in here that I'm like, I don't know if that needs to be, in a minor subdivision. Just read it, see if anything comes to you, or if you live in a subdivision and you know from experience, you know, that, something in it doesn't work or doesn't look right or whatever, bring it up. That's what you bring at the next meeting. So homework is this, and then we come back, correct me if I'm wrong, to discuss what we would like to see change in this. If we decide nothing changes, nothing changes. If we do, then we're gonna have that sent to Michael, and he's gonna send it to places that it needs to be sent to.
but how much detail are we getting into on that?
I would just suggest, again, don't focus on specific language, specific definitions. Focus on, themes, issues, gaps. So if Mills River Crossing with the roads is a big example, but let's
Yeah.
take it to the higher level. The town doesn't inspect any private roads.
Right.
Because traditionally, towns don't inspect those roads for the construction unless they take them over to use in the Powellville program. We don't do that. So again, that's taking, a major road definition, but having a theme to pass to the consultant so they can draft it appropriately.
Lighting is one of those, correct? Like, we were to make our subdivisions have better ecological lighting.
So
This
the-
would be the time to speak up about it, right?
So the lighting ordinance was passed, and I can't remember, in the last 2 years, so it's relatively new, so there are standards for that. Now, yeah, that's right. Open space is an easy one. We don't require any open space for any type of subdivision. So again, what are the gaps? What are the themes we would want the UDO to consider? And I think those general suggestions we can send to the consultants, and they'll use their expertise to make the draft ordinance reflect.
So why can't we, before the next meeting, review minor, major, family subdivisions and look for big themes rather than line by line by line by line? Just look for big themes that we think should be included or something that's there should be excluded theme wise, and we can knock that out in the next meeting, right?
I'd like to see as much as possible. My
Yeah.
concern is running out of time.
Because after we do that, and if we can get this map with some teeth to it from the UDO consultant, then that's really where the rubber meets the road. That's where our opportunity lies. That's where we need to spend a lot of our time.
I mean, ultimately, I think we're all agreeing that that eventual zoning map that the UDO is going to be submitting is going to be our most likely avenue of approach for rural residential among other realignment.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, the first thing he said was, and I realize it's not zoning, but the state required this a number of years ago.
Right.
And,
Well, that's why I don't want to lose track of this map, because even.
right, I don't either, not at all. Yeah.
Even one of the council members, their first response when why didn't you look at the whole town for this? We didn't
Right.
even address the north half of the, part
Well,
of the town.
and then based on that meeting the other day and based on some adjustments that were made to this map where we have different areas that do different things, I think that was wonderful. I'm glad we've
agree.
adapted.
I
I hope
don't
the
want
town
it to
council.
end with, I
No, I
Thank you.
agree. No, I think this is where we focus. Let's put zoning behind this map, right? As simple as that. Let's put zoning behind this map, thematic wise, and let the UDO do his work. But we're the we're the sounding board from the community to the town council, and in this case also from the community to the UDO consultant. So let's put some themes behind this. That's where I'd spend my time. But I would at the next meeting, everybody review major, minor and family subdivisions and come up with your themes. And let's knock that out at the next meeting.
I like it.
I have a question. Do we have any voice, like, with things like the restrictions as far as speed limit for our town on secondary road and main roads? Do we make, have a,
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Speed limits,
Oh,
changes, throughout town. It's limited to some extent because we have DOT, because they're state roads, all of them, DOT has to concur with what the town wants. So we've actually already kicked off that process and actually, did August, Patty, the traffic schedule? I believe mid-August, we have a council meeting where we're gonna be kicking off that discussion with council.
I just know it's when you draw, you know, treated it, especially 280 is with all the congestion, it's just nice traffic. It's pretty dangerous the way it is.
And you're not the only one we've heard that from.
Okay, so it sounds like, I just want to see if the rest of the board is in consensus with this. That the plan would be for the next meeting to have kind of thought about bigger themes that we would want to see in the UDO's subdivisions, whether it's minor, major, family, or otherwise. And that's kind of what we want to try to bring to the table. I would also suggest that I don't know how well received it was, but I thought that Michael's suggestion and, you know, to the extent that there might be something informative in the library of learning that they have acquired, perhaps that would be something that we use to kind of set up the discussion. Again, it's, you know, assuming it's a 30 minutes.
And I would recommend we leave that up to Michael's discretion on the topic based on whatever,
Yeah.
right,
But if.
which is what you're saying. Yeah,
Division.
right.
something That would be relevant. among
Right.
What you have, you know, it sounds like if it's kind of broken down in that way, it could be useful because I think, a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. Right? Like we don't know what is, I mean, we might have some gut feelings about what's missing. But kind of what we want to actually address, it could be informative and also, you know, inspirational. If nothing else, educational.
Right.
So is that a plan that everyone feels comfortable with, having homework given, particularly that we don't have a meeting in July?
Yes.
Gives us some time to ponder on these issues. And then, you know, also, well, hopefully, town council will have an opportunity and we'll have, you know, we'll have some consensus on the proposed amendments to the plan that will overlap with the.
So that should be an agenda item for the next meeting then.
And what I'll do as well, just so everyone at least has the PDFs, I will just email out to the planning board, part 1, but I will also make the part 2 and part 3, because right now you don't have the major subdivisions. Again, you're welcome to look it up through the website, but I think breaking it apart might be easier to go through.
That'd be
So
wonderful.
Yeah.
We'll send that out to you.
That'd be super
Good.
helpful. Super
Lord.
helpful.
But after that, let's add some teeth to this for as many months as we can prior to the deadline. So.
Yes, yeah, that sounds good. Okay, I think we have a plan then on our new business. And do we have any other items to bring up tonight?
Jim, you're up.
Okay, make a motion, we adjourn.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
No.